7th year of our relationship. My fiancé's assistant sent me a photo of them registering their marriage. I looked at the photo calmly and told my girlfriend I wanted to break up. The assistant's voice choked as she called me, begging me not to be angry. Sir, Zoe and I were just joking around taking that photo. She's under a lot of pressure at work. Please understand her. It's all my fault. On the other end of the phone was Zoe Morgan speaking to me with a tenderness I'd never heard before. Don't cry, there's no need to explain to him. He's just a live-in son-in-law. If he leaves me, where else can he go? I said nothing. I threw away the engagement ring, grabbed the admission letter in my hand, and flew abroad. After turning off my phone, I silently began packing. Zoe Morgan didn't come home all night. It wasn't until the next morning, reeking of alcohol, that she finally pushed the door open. Seeing me sitting on the sofa, she barked in her usual commanding tone, "Go make me a cup of sweet tea." I glanced up briefly, but ignored her, continuing with what I was doing. When I didn't respond, Zoe frowned and strode over. "Daniel Wilson, are you deaf or what?" She froze when she saw my packed bags, her face instantly darkening. "What do you mean? Are you really going to break up?" Without looking at her, I replied flatly, "Breaking up isn't a joke." Maybe it was my calm attitude that made Zoe's eyes turn cold. She suddenly stepped forward and kicked my suitcase over, towering above me. "Have you had your fun yet?" I looked her in the eye and curled my lips into a sneer. "Fun me?" Her expression grew impatient. "You've already registered your marriage with someone else. What right do you have to say those things to me? Didn't I explain to you already? It was just for fun." Michael was diagnosed with cancer. Before he passed, he wanted to give his parents some closure. You know, he's been working for me since graduation, not just as my assistant, but as my friend. I was just helping him out. "So, what?" She glanced at me with a tone full of condescension. "If it comes down to it, we can register again later. Is that better?" I waved her off, cutting her nonsense short. "No need to say any more. You're a married woman now. Talk to your husband about it." Her face turned even colder. "In the end, you have no heart and don't trust me. If that's the case, then there's no reason for us to get married." Her words were threatening, but I couldn't care less. "Fine." She froze. Disbelief filled her eyes. "Are you serious?" I said nothing, grabbed my bags, and stood to leave. As I passed her, she suddenly grabbed my wrist, her voice cold and ruthless. "Think it over. Without me, you're nothing." I met her gaze. This woman I had loved for 7 years now looked at me with nothing but coldness and contempt. My heart ached, but I took a deep breath, smiled faintly, and slowly pried her fingers off mine. "Wish you happiness." Then I pulled my suitcase and walked away without looking back. Before leaving, I heard Zoe's angry voice behind me. "Daniel Wilson, don't ever think about coming back. I want to see what kind of life a live-in son-in-law like you can have without me." A live-in son. I stopped and looked back, not out of regret or longing, but to see clearly the face of the girl I once loved, now so hateful. She stormed to the door, gave me a cold look, and slammed it shut with a loud bang. The sound echoed her fury. Outside the neighborhood gate, I ran into Michael Evans. No need to ask. I already knew he was the one who brought Zoe Morgan home. He probably waited here all along, ready to swoop in the moment Zoe and I argued, playing the loyal lapdog. He rolled down his car window, glanced at my luggage, and sneered. Well, isn't this Wilson, the general manager, getting kicked out by Zoe?" I shot him a cold glare and ignored him, but he leaned in with a smug smile, blocking my way. "Better for you to leave sooner rather than later. You're an old man who doesn't deserve her." I stopped and looked at his annoying smirk, then smiled. "Right, I don't deserve her, but guys like you who live off others suit her perfectly." Michael Evans' face darkened, and before he could react, I kicked him in the stomach and walked away without another word. No need to be polite with trash. That night, I found a hotel to stay in temporarily. Lying on the bed, memories from all these years flooded my mind. Zoe Morgan had once been my one and only, the center of my world. Unfortunately, she was the high and mighty eldest daughter of the Lee family, and I was just an ordinary bookworm. We met in college, but barely interacted at first. Like every other guy who liked her, I could only watch from afar. I followed her everywhere, classes, meals, breaks, just to catch a glimpse. Eventually, just to see her more, I transferred to her department. Before today, that was the only decision I never regretted, because it was that choice that finally brought Zoe and me closer. Thanks to my excellent grades, Zoe picked me as her partner for a group project. I remember that day clearly. I was so excited I could barely speak. Looking at her beautiful face, I stammered for a long time before finally blurting out, "I do." Zoe Morgan let out a soft laugh, her eyes curving into crescent moons. "You say that like it's a wedding vow or something." Everyone around us burst into teasing applause. I lowered my head, awkwardly smiling like a kid caught doing something wrong, but she didn't mind at all. Instead, she stepped in to save me. "Stop joking around. Daniel's so outstanding. It should be me who's lucky to have him as a partner." From that day on, our feelings gradually deepened. When I finally confessed my love, she didn't hesitate for a second before saying yes. We spent a wonderful college life together, the model couple everyone envied. At that time, my grades were excellent. Just after graduating, I received numerous offers from international companies. My professors even suggested I pursue further studies abroad, but for Zoe Morgan, I turned them all down and willingly started from the bottom at her family's company. She too clashed with her family several times just so we could be together. She fought against her family's pressure with all her might to carve out a small space for our love. Sometimes I still can't figure out why things between Zoe and me ended up like this. We both shared the same goal, to build a stable future for each other. But ever since Michael Evans showed up, everything changed. Michael was younger, livelier, and better at charming people than I was. Somewhere along the way, conversations between Zoe and me, which once covered everything under the sun, gradually shifted to stories about her and Michael Evans. At first, I was furious and jealous, but after several fights with Zoe, seeing her indifferent affection toward me and hearing her complaints that I was overreacting, I understood her heart had long since left me. It wasn't so much Michael Evans' presence that bothered me. It was Zoe's fearless attitude that chilled me to the bone. No matter what reasons I gave to keep her, a single word from Michael sent her running to him without hesitation. She gave all her love to Michael Evans. To me, the man who had stood by her side for 7 years, there was only coldness and complaints. And yet, I still proposed to her. I believed that after marriage, she would gradually rein herself in, but the marriage certificate bearing her and another man's name shattered the last veil over our relationship. Staring out at the night skyline, I finally felt a release. They say relationships hit the 7-year mark, and any long-term relationship will eventually grow weary after the calm fades. Maybe my fate with Zoe Morgan simply ended there. The next morning, I went to the company to resign. Frankly, it was just a formality. My power there had long since been stripped away. So much so that when I submitted my resignation, the HR director didn't even ask a single question before approving it. Afterward, she called me with a fake sweet tone. "What a pity, General Manager Wilson. We were all looking forward to your wedding candy with Morgan." Listening to her sarcastic voice, I felt nothing but calm, replying with a smile, "No rush. You'll get to eat it soon enough." I hung up. Before I even stepped out of the company doors, Zoe Morgan called, "Daniel Wilson, know your limits. I've rejected your resignation. That's enough. Otherwise, I'll make sure you don't get a single penny. Get out of the Morgan Group." I smiled coldly. 7 years of love. Did she really think I was some gold-digging freeloader who could be controlled by money? Suit yourself. I don't care. Then I blocked and deleted her number. Suddenly, the world felt quiet again. I submitted my resignation once more, and this time Zoe agreed without hesitation. With my resignation letter in hand, I left the company without looking back. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in a long time, no longer worrying if Zoe would be physically unwell after social events, nor about her moods, no longer stressing over company affairs, big or small. Early the next morning, I was jolted awake by a rapid phone ring. Answering, I heard Zoe's furious voice through the receiver. "Daniel Wilson, what's going on? You're responsible for today's project signing. You better show up on time." I shook my head to clear the sleep, fighting annoyance as I held the phone away from my ear. Once she finally stopped yelling, I spoke slowly. "General Manager Morgan, you must have forgotten. You agreed to my resignation yesterday. So, what does this project have to do with me?" "Daniel Wilson," Zoe's voice suddenly rose, dripping with anger and warning. "I warn you, don't force my hand. While I accepted your resignation, the handover isn't done. If you don't come, I have every right to report you." "I wasn't buying it," I answered coldly. "Don't think you can use this to pressure me. If you'd actually read my resignation letter, you wouldn't be wasting your breath on me now." Then I hung up. What I hadn't expected was how soon I'd have to face Zoe Morgan again. After news of my resignation spread, several companies I had worked with reached out, eager to recruit me. One even had its owner personally invite me out to dinner. I couldn't say no, so I went. The owner was generous enough to book a private room in a luxury hotel, but as I approached the entrance, I spotted a whole crowd of familiar faces from my old company gathered in the lobby. That's when I realized the hotel was actually owned by the Morgan Group. And unsurprisingly, Zoe Morgan's so-called project signing was likely taking place there. Just as I hesitated over whether to go inside, Michael Evans appeared out of nowhere. Seeing me, he smirked mockingly. Gone was his usual meekness, replaced by a cocky swagger as he blocked my path. Well, if it isn't the good for nothing. You sure talked a big game before. What, scared now?" I gave him a cold look and sneered. "Didn't I beat you last time? You here for another round?" Michael's face darkened. He took an instinctive step back then, flushed with embarrassment and anger at my taunt. He snapped, "Daniel Wilson, don't get cocky. Morgan Group's general manager is my wife now. You're nothing but a worthless loser." I couldn't be bothered with him. I shoved him aside and walked straight into the hotel. Michael started yelling about calling security, but the commotion drew the attention of everyone in the lobby. I calmly waved a greeting to the crowd before heading upstairs. The owner had booked a private room on the second floor, but someone didn't want me to leave so easily. Daniel Wilson. Stop right there. Zoe Morgan clicked down the stairs in her heels, eyeing my clothes with contempt. For such an important day, you show up dressed like that. Don't you care about embarrassing me? I'm the one who should be embarrassed. Then she turned and ordered her assistant to take me for makeup and a change of clothes. I pushed the assistant away with a smile. Zoe Morgan, how many times do I have to tell you? I've already resigned. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. I'm here to meet someone, not play house with you. Don't tell me how to dress or what's embarrassing. She was taken aback, almost instinctively sneering. You're here to meet someone you think you're worthy. The Morgan Group's hotel was 5-star. Zoe probably believed that as a live-in son-in-law, I had no right to be here. I couldn't be bothered to argue and turned to head upstairs. Just then, another voice stopped me. Oh, Daniel, long time no see. I turned to see a stout, middle-aged man warmly approaching. Chris Anderson from the Anderson Group. He was one of the key players in today's event. The project Zoe mentioned was a collaboration with Anderson Group. Chris Anderson. It's been a while. We exchanged pleasantries before. Chris turned to Zoe. General Manager Morgan, I trust Daniel's character. I'm ready to sign the contract today. On one condition, Daniel will be the sole person responsible for our project going forward. His words stunned not only me, but even Zoe Morgan. I quickly waved my hand. Chris, that's not appropriate. I was about to explain that I'd resigned, but Zoe suddenly grabbed my arm from behind, smiling sweetly at Chris. Don't worry, Chris Anderson. That's not a problem at all. Then she tightened her grip on my arm. Daniel Wilson, you better cooperate with me. Her tone left no room for denial. It was pure warning. I snorted, shook off her hand, and loudly declared, drawing puzzled looks from Chris and the others. Sorry, but I won't be participating in or cooperating with this project. I hereby announce that I submitted my resignation yesterday and have no future ties to the Morgan Group. That includes Miss Zoe Morgan, who has registered her marriage with her assistant. She will have nothing to do with me going forward. I gave Chris an apologetic smile. Sorry, Chris Anderson, but I don't think we can continue working together. Zoe stood there stunned, clearly not expecting me to show such disregard. Chris's smile faded, his expression darkening. General Manager Morgan, is what he's saying true? Zoe faltered, unsure how to respond. Michael Evans hurried over, wearing a sycophantic grin. Chris Anderson, please don't take it personally. This guy is just a freeloader. What matters is the strength of the Morgan Group. I'm in charge of this project now. Chris glanced at him, then at Zoe's eyes, flashing with contempt and amusement. A pretty boy like that thinks he can negotiate with me. Morgan, you really have a sense of humor. Chris and his team left in a grand procession. Before leaving, Chris shook my hand and promised to keep me in mind for future job opportunities. I smiled and nodded in agreement. Once the Anderson Group had left, Zoe Morgan could no longer hold back. She stormed up to me, furious, and swung at me. Daniel Wilson, you bastard. Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused the group? I grabbed her wrist coldly and shoved her aside. Zoe Morgan had been spoiled her whole life. She wasn't used to this kind of humiliation. The anger and disappointment in her eyes as she looked at me were unmistakable. I spoke calmly. I've told you before, I've resigned. I have nothing to do with you or your company. Everything that happened today was because of your reckless arrogance. What does it have to do with me? With that, I stopped engaging and turned to head upstairs. Inside the private room, I had a pleasant conversation with the person in charge. But considering future collaborations with the Morgan Group, I knew I couldn't avoid entanglements with Zoe Morgan. In the end, I turned down the owner's warm invitation to stay. After dinner, I walked the owner to his car. When I looked back, I was surprised to see Zoe Morgan still sitting in a corner of the lobby. Michael Evans was crouched beside her, and the two seemed to be arguing. I had no interest in their quarrel and was about to leave when Zoe suddenly spotted me. Daniel Wilson, wait. She hurried over and grabbed my sleeve, her eyes full of grievance. Daniel Wilson, don't be angry. Come home with me, please. Didn't we agree we were getting married? Michael Evans followed behind, looking pale and weak. I'm feeling terrible. Could you come to the hospital with me? A flicker of conflict crossed Zoe's eyes, but in the end, she steeled herself, ignoring him completely, and turned to me with hopeful eyes. Stop this. I know I was wrong. What Michael and I had was just a joke. Michael froze, disbelief flooding his eyes. I sighed. What's the point? Zoe, you have a husband. You should at least watch your words. But Zoe acted as if she hadn't heard, gripping my hand tightly and pouring out memories of the past. Growing impatient, I shrugged her off. Who's shameless here? You're the one who registered your marriage with someone else. I let you have him. And now you're the one bothering me for no reason. What exactly do you want? Not everyone has to live according to your wishes. My cold gaze made it clear, I wasn't joking. Panic flashed in her eyes as she hurried to explain. No, Daniel Wilson, I've always loved you. If you want, I'll divorce Michael immediately. Her voice choked with emotion. Her eyes were red-rimmed. That pitiful look felt strangely unfamiliar. I stared at her expressionlessly, feeling nothing inside. Once, even the slightest frown from her would worry me for days. But now, this scene only irritated me. She wasn't heartbroken over my leaving. She was mourning, losing a servant who came at her beck and call. Enough, Zoe Morgan, stop bothering me. If you really care, why don't you turn back and look after your poor new husband? She was unmoved, head bowed, wiping tears, repeating, no, no, my husband will only ever be you and only you. I know I was wrong, and from now on, I don't want to hear any more. If it were before, hearing those words from her, I might have given her everything, my life, my fortune, without hesitation. Now, I just felt annoyed. I pulled my hand away coldly. Don't waste your breath. You should focus on handling today's breach of contract. Losing such a big project would definitely impact the Morgan Group. Zoe knew this, too. While she was stunned, I turned and strode away. I had underestimated Zoe Morgan's persistence. Somehow, she found out where I was staying and blocked me downstairs. I wanted to ignore her, but the moment she saw me, she ran over, trying to hug me. I coldly stepped aside. Miss Zoe, what are you trying to do now? I was impatient. Zoe lifted her head, looking into my eyes with sincerity. I've thought it through. My dad is taking care of the company. I don't need to worry about that. You're the one who matters most to me. I stayed silent, or rather, I didn't know what to say. She thought I agreed and cautiously moved closer, reaching to hold my hand. Daniel Wilson, I even twisted my ankle. Looking for you, I smirked, glancing at the figure behind her. If it's twisted, you should see a doctor or go complain to your legitimate husband, not me. My words almost broke Zoe's composure. She turned sharply to shout at a somewhat injured Michael Evans, not far behind us. I told you to stop pestering me. Are you done yet? Then she faced me again, her eyes softening. Daniel Wilson, I've decided to divorce him. I truly know I was wrong. Can't you feel my love for you? I looked at her seriously. Her love, did she really love me? I didn't think so. The proud eldest daughter of the Morgan family had always been the center of attention. She couldn't stand my repeated refusals, especially since I had once been her plaything. She tried to conquer me, but once she got what she wanted, chances were, just like Michael Evans, I would become just another flavorless presence she'd tire of. Your husband's still here. Aren't you going to soothe him? And no matter what, you two are legally married. That's not exactly proper, is it? I sneered. Sarcastically, Michael Evans appeared behind Zoe Morgan and without hesitation, wrapped his arms around her. Zoe, don't do this. Let's go home. All right. Zoe tried to pull away, but I coldly cut in. Zoe, Morgan, stop pestering me. Since you've made your choice, you have to face the consequences. From now on, I never want to see you again. Maybe. My words wounded her pride because the look of grievance on her face vanished, replaced by deep anger. She turned and threw herself into Michael's arms, shooting me a dark, disdainful glare. Daniel Wilson, if you're going to be shameless, don't blame me for being ruthless. And next time, don't come crawling to me on your knees. I shook my head, with a smile, barely bothering to respond. The news of Morgan Group's breach spread like wildfire within the circle, especially the scandal about Zoe Morgan and her hooking up. Everyone knew. Countless onlookers and gossip lovers jumped on the bandwagon. Naturally, I, the ex, was dug up and exposed. My phone was bombarded nonstop by reporters chasing every juicy detail. Helpless, I had no choice but to cancel my original number at the carrier's office just to get some peace. But only a few days later, Zoe Morgan showed up again. She brought bodyguards and blocked me at the apartment entrance, even threatening that if I didn't go with her, I wouldn't be allowed to leave, worried about the disturbance to the neighbors. I frowned but got into the car with her. Zoe Morgan, are you never going to quit? She flashed a trace of irritation at my question but quickly regained her composure. Daniel Wilson, I'm here. Because of my father, he's hospitalized and wants to see you. Her tone had lost all its arrogance from that night. Now it held a hint of plea. I didn't bother arguing and leaned back in the seat, closing my eyes to rest. At the hospital, in a VIP room, I met Zoe Morgan's father. The once formidable man lay pale and lonely on the bed. Dad, Zoe whispered softly. I brought Daniel Wilson. He opened his eyes, sharp and piercing, his gaze radiating an intense pressure. So this was the presence of someone in power, I thought. Even Zoe Morgan, who acted so arrogantly before me, was meek and nervous before him, fidgeting with her sleeves. Like a child, in the past, I might have comforted her, assuring her everything was fine. But times have changed. I had no reason to care about their moods anymore, and casually took a seat on the sofa. crossing my legs. With a sarcastic tone, I asked, "Did Morgan Group summon me for something?" His eyes flickered. Then he spoke flatly. "You must have heard about Morgan Group's recent stock plunge." I smiled, but remained silent. His expression darkened. "I called you here because I want you and Zoe Morgan to get married as soon as possible. That way, the cooperation with Anderson Group can proceed smoothly, and you can officially join the Morgan family, killing two birds with one stone." Though his voice sounded weak due to his health, his tone was unmistakably commanding and disdainful. Since learning of our relationship, he had done everything to block it. He believed I was a penniless country bumpkin clinging to Zoe Morgan for the Morgan family fortune, and to this day, he thought the same. I smiled inwardly, realizing that the Morgan Group was no match for the power of the Anderson Group. After offending them, there was no way to reconcile. Once Chris Anderson expressed admiration for me, they set their sights on me as a tool to climb higher. I was nothing but a pawn to these powerful people with no rights at all. I've already arranged for her to divorce that Michael Evans. As long as you agree, you can marry my daughter immediately. Tears glistened in Zoe Morgan's eyes, her hope tangible. I looked at her and said slowly and clearly, "Sorry, I never accept second-hand goods." As soon as the words left my mouth, Zoe Morgan's father's face darkened. He slapped Zoe across the face. "Shameless brat. For the sake of a pretty boy, you've caused such a mess. And yet, you still act all fierce in front of me. Don't you know your place?" I just smiled at his thinly veiled insults, not bothering to argue. Zoe Morgan covered her red cheek, looking at me with hurt eyes as if hoping I would say something. I remained silent, watching coldly before smirking and getting up to leave. Perhaps feeling his dignity was hurt, Zoe Morgan's father suddenly sprang up from the bed and shouted curses at my back. I treated it as barking dogs and ignored it. But unexpectedly, Zoe Morgan left her father behind and chased after me. "Miss Zoe, do you have something else?" I asked impatiently. Choking on her emotions, Zoe said, "Daniel Wilson, I've divorced Michael Evans. There's nothing left between us. Won't you marry me now?" I said nothing, just stared at her coldly. My message was clear. Zoe Morgan cried, shaking her head through tears. "That's not true. You weren't like this before. Is there really no chance for us anymore? You know I love you, but I don't love you anymore." I cut her off. "I don't believe you." Zoe Morgan's emotions flared even more. "I don't believe it. Daniel Wilson, you used to love me so much. Have you really forgotten?" She shouted hysterically, wild and unhinged. A stark contrast to the poised and elegant Morgan Group CEO, everyone knew. I smiled faintly, looking at her with eyes completely devoid of feeling. "You said it yourself, didn't you? That was the past. The Zoe Morgan I loved is dead." My words struck like thunder, exploding in Zoe's mind. She shook her head desperately, trying to fight back. But I'd lost all patience. I didn't want to argue, and I didn't want to hear her apologies. I pushed her away and turned to leave. Zoe collapsed to the floor, crying out loud. After that day, we cut off all contact completely. Meanwhile, news of Morgan Group's decline flooded the media. To compensate Anderson Group for the hefty breach penalty, Zoe Morgan even tried to cut costs through layoffs. For a while, the entire Morgan Group was shaken to its core, and negative headlines flooded in like a tidal wave. If not for the company's strong foundation, it might have collapsed entirely. I felt little about it. All consequences were of Zoe Morgan's own making. At the same time, Chris Anderson reached out to me again with genuine sincerity. I was even tempted, but thinking about the inevitable dealings with the Morgan family later, I declined. Instead, I contacted my old university mentor to inquire about studying abroad. He was glad to hear it. He had regretted how I stubbornly gave up big company offers for Zoe Morgan back then. Seeing me turn things around now, he was wholeheartedly supportive. "Daniel Wilson, you're still young. This is the time to fight for your future." I didn't let him down. After retaking exams twice, I was admitted to a prestigious university overseas. To celebrate, my mentor organized a reunion with some of my former classmates. At that reunion, I saw Zoe Morgan again, only a few months apart, and I barely recognized her. She was the one to break the awkward silence. "Long time no see. Daniel Wilson," she smiled at me, though the smile seemed forced. I nodded but said little. Her eyes darkened, and she gave a self-deprecating smile. "I probably look pretty awful now, huh?" "Not bad, just a bit worn out," I answered honestly. Maybe it had been too long since we talked like this because her eyes teared again. Her voice was filled with both grievance and longing. "Daniel Wilson, I thought we'd never see each other again." She stepped closer, almost touching me. I frowned and took a step back to put some distance between us. "Just talk. Don't get so close. It might give others the wrong idea." My words and actions showed clear detachment. Zoe froze, the sadness in her eyes almost tangible. I felt annoyed. Who was she putting on this act for? "If there's nothing else, let's get inside. The professors are waiting." I left the words hanging and brushed past her. When the news of my acceptance to a top foreign university spread, old classmates raised their glasses to celebrate. After a few rounds, I was feeling a little drunk. My mentor, unable to hold his liquor, left early. I understood he was giving us young people some space. Once he left, the atmosphere loosened up and the chatter grew louder. Suddenly, the topic turned to me. I smiled and answered questions. But inevitably, someone brought up Zoe Morgan. Back in college, we were the golden couple everyone admired. My smile vanished, and I stood, raising my glass. With everyone's eyes on me, I said, Miss Zoe is from a wealthy family, not someone I'm worthy of. I'm grateful for our past because it made me a better man. With that, I drained my glass. The crowd, sensing the mood, didn't press further and quickly changed the subject. Still, a few couldn't resist teasing us, trying to get me to play a couples game with Zoe Morgan under the guise of drunken fun. Seeing me put down my glass and ignore them, Zoe stepped in to defuse the situation, but the group wouldn't let it go. Zoe lowered her head, seemingly helpless, and moved closer to me that I nearly stood up reflexively. But she stumbled as if drunk and suddenly grabbed me. The crowd erupted with kiss. A flicker of light shone in Zoe's eyes as she actually leaned in and kissed me. I couldn't take it anymore and pushed her away forcefully. Enough with the games. My sudden outburst stunned everyone into silence. The room grew tense and suffocating. Ignoring them, I fixed my gaze on Zoe Morgan. Zoe, others might not know our history and can joke around, but don't you know better? I bit my lip, looking pitiful. I ignored her and raised my voice. Zoe Morgan and I are broken up because she married another man. After a brief moment of shock, the crowd burst into heated discussion. I couldn't be bothered and tossed out. I've had too much to drink. I'm heading home. Then I hurried away. But Zoe Morgan was relentless, trailing closely behind me. I never thought she could become this stubborn and difficult. For a moment, I even found myself missing the cold, distant version of her from before. I stopped and turned around, looking coldly at her as she caught up. Are you done yet? Don't you think your behavior is really cheap? Zoe halted, tears streaming down her face. I know you're going abroad soon. I just wanted to see you a few more times. I felt nothing inside. When we were together, she never cherished me. Now pretending to be sentimental. Who is she trying to fool? Besides, I had already received photos from Michael Evans a month ago, showing they'd made up. So, why was Zoe still bothering me? If you have a lover, a husband, then you should act accordingly. She shook her head desperately. No, we're completely done. She tried to explain frantically. Only then did I realize Michael Evans's illness had been a sham all along. He wasn't sick at all. He just wanted to win Zoe's sympathy and steal her away from me. Seeing her tear-streaked face and trembling body, I couldn't summon an ounce of pity. Michael Evans was a jerk, no doubt. But without Zoe's consent, none of his excessive behavior would have been possible. So rather than saying, Michael Evans deceived her, it's more accurate to say she willingly let herself be deceived. But now everything was settled. What's the point of arguing who was right or wrong anymore? Zoe Morgan, let go of me and let yourself go, too. Isn't it better for us to end things with some dignity? The next time I saw Zoe Morgan was on the day I boarded my flight. She wore a mask and followed me, thinking I wouldn't notice. I decided to play along, walking into the lounge. She sat just behind me. I pretended not to see, putting on headphones and waiting quietly. Before I left, I got an unexpected call. It was from Zoe Morgan's father. His tone was unusually polite, almost flattering. Daniel, come back. I want to apologize. Could you give my daughter another chance? I know I wronged you both in the past, but now I see your abilities and how well you've cared for my daughter. Since you left, she's been so down every day. As a father, it pains me. So, I'm begging you, for old time's sake, to give her another chance. I stood and locked eyes with Zoe Morgan. Ms. Morgan, Mr. Morgan, I won't say this twice, so listen carefully. From now on, I am a stranger to you, the Morgan family, and Zoe Morgan. I walked toward the boarding gate and glanced back casually. Zoe Morgan collapsed in tears on the floor. I didn't look back or turn around. Only when I was on the plane, staring out at the blue sky and white clouds, did my mind slowly calm. I deleted every contact connected to Zoe Morgan. After landing, facing a completely unfamiliar environment, a flicker of unease stirred in my chest, but it was quickly replaced by excitement. Are you Daniel Wilson? A young, pretty girl ran up holding a sign. I'm Abigail Scott, your escort. I extended my hand and smiled. Nice to meet you, Abigail Scott. During my time abroad, I threw myself back into my intense studies. All those messy thoughts gradually faded amidst the demanding courses. Just as I was about to forget the name, Zoe Morgan, one late night, I received a call from across the ocean. Is this Mr. Daniel Wilson? Yes, this is he. I'm Zoe Morgan's lawyer. She passed away at 3:10 p.m. Beijing time. Before she died, she asked me to pass a message to you. Before I could speak, Abigail, freshly out of the shower and drying her hair, came over. "Honey, who's calling so late?" I smiled and gave her a reassuring look. "Don't worry, it's nobody important." Then, without giving the caller a chance, I said, "I don't want to hear it," and hung up decisively. Abigail nestled into my arms, her eyes full of tenderness. "Darling, come to my place tomorrow. My parents want to see you." I smiled and gently brushed her nose. "Okay."